everybody, it's Kevra. That's me, I'm Kevra. Now what is Nintendo Pictures? No, seriously, what is it? That's not a rhetorical question. For those of you who haven't heard, Nintendo just announced that they are buying Dynamo Pictures, and when the deal comes to a close in October, it will be renamed Nintendo Pictures. Now, I personally want to talk about this for a variety of reasons. The biggest reason that I want to talk about it is because I am very interested in Nintendo adapting their IPs into television and movies. In fact, that's why I wanted to start doing YouTube videos in the first place, is because I really wanted to talk about The Legend of Zelda getting adapted. I mean, it's something I've wanted ever since I was in grade school. Of course, my thoughts and opinions on how it should be done has definitely changed over the years, especially because now I know a lot more about story structure. I've written scripts myself, I've taken classes, I've read books, and with all that knowledge, I basically sat down, came up with 17 videos, all about 30 minutes long, and where are they? I'm working on it. Just hold on. I know I launched that channel before I launched this channel, and this channel's got like 15 videos, and that channel only has a minute-long trailer. But like, it's just a lot of work because I want to release a lot of them at once, and there's been the moving and the setting up the background and all this stuff. Just chill out, Charlie. Just to let you know, Charlie's an actual person. It's not like, tomfoolery, like where it's just like, he's an actual real person. He does the ranked videos, and he wants to see the how to adapt The Legend of Zelda, and it doesn't matter. So when it comes to Nintendo Pictures, I have a very particular interest in it. That being said, just because a bunch of people are implying that means Nintendo's gonna make a bunch more movies and TV shows, that doesn't necessarily mean that's what it's gonna be. So let's start with what we do know. On July 14th, we found out that Nintendo was acquiring Dynamo Pictures, and the reason why was to strengthen the planning and production structure of visual content in the Nintendo group. Not only that, but that's it. That's literally all they said, and then they stopped talking. But because of the words visual content, it has to be movies and TV. It absolutely has to be. I mean, what else could it be? I mean, it could be a lot of things. I mean, video games themselves are visual content, and they have worked on video games. I mean, if you go over to their website, you can see that they've done motion capture, they've done VR, they've done animation and CG for lots of different games, including Monster Hunter World, Death Stranding, Persona 5, Nier. It's one of those games where I hear about it all the time, but then when I try to pronounce it myself, I always have this moment of like, what is it? And then it just comes out. I mean, I guess I could have looked it up, but, it was that or make a joke out of it, and I chose the joke. So it could be that Nintendo Pictures is mostly going to work on Nintendo games. It's already known that Nintendo does a lot of outsourcing. They don't exactly have the resources that Microsoft or Sony have. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm trying to act like Nintendo isn't some multi-billion-dollar company. And you know what? All companies technically do outsourcing, but when it comes to Nintendo, you have to remember they are simply a gaming company. Like, if someone told you they work for Sony, your follow-up question would probably be, okay, like Sony Pictures, music, PlayStation? What do you make the cameras? Like, what are we talking about here? And Dynamo Pictures has worked on some pretty impressive games. I mean, a lot of people believe that Sony bought Bungie strictly because Bungie knows how to do a live service game well, and Sony wanted to be able to replicate that same success with their future games. That was an acquisition that cost $3.6 billion. Microsoft is buying Activision for almost $70 billion. Dynamo Pictures only cost $250,000. And if Nintendo was wanting to dive even more into motion capture, this is a perfect way to do that. It's a very cheap solution, actually. We've also been hearing that Nintendo is spending more money now on game development than they ever have. And with more game development means more hands on deck. It also means better hardware, better technology, and Dynamo Pictures can provide at least a little bit of that knowledge. Heck, when you look at the amount of VR projects that Dynamo Pictures has done, maybe Nintendo's wanting to get into VR more. Like Skyward Sword would have been the perfect game in VR because they literally made that game to make you feel like you were Link, and the only thing that could have made that feel more real is if you had VR goggles on. But let's just assume for a second that Nintendo is not buying them to work on video games. Or at least that wasn't the sole purpose. With their animation resume, people are automatically assuming they'll be doing movies and TV for Nintendo, but why does it have to be movies and TV? The one thing I haven't heard anyone bring up is the fact that Nintendo now has its own little theme park within Universal Studios. And if you've been to Universal Studios, or you've been to Disney World, or heck, even if you've been to Nintendo World in Japan, that means you know that a lot of these attractions have short little clips that go along with them. In Nintendo World specifically, I know that they already have something where like the toads are gathering your food or preparing your food when you go to the cafe. And I'm sure on other attractions they have other little clips like that too. And because they're building more of these theme parks, you know, in California, in Florida, wherever, and these different parks may have different attractions or maybe even just different clips to show. And maybe they want to consistently change them. That way, whenever you go, 2 or 3 years from now, it's not the same stuff you saw before. On top of the fact that they're probably adding stuff. I mean, we've already heard either rumors or it's been announced, I can't remember which, that they're doing a Donkey Kong section. Now, because it's Universal and they already have their animation companies, this option does seem a little bit less likely. Then again, it's not like Nintendo doesn't do a lot of their own animation. I mean, we're talking about video games. They literally have animation in video games. They have animation in their marketing videos. And maybe these are the types of things that Dynamo Pictures is also going to be working on, which could include more things like the Pikmin shorts, or the Kid Icarus anime they did right before Kid Icarus Uprising came out. I mean, with how many people currently own a Nintendo Switch, you could easily make some short videos here or there that kind of like fill you in on what these games are or what the story is to get you to play them if you've never played Kid Icarus or Pikmin or whatever the game is. Of course, the best way to market these games and reach a potential new audience is to adapt these games into an actual television show or movie. I mean, that's exactly what I'm assuming that the Mario movie is going to be. And why I tell people to quit worrying about it, because it's most likely not a movie for you. How dare they not make a product specifically tailored towards me? They will be hearing from my lawyer on Twitter. Illumination Studios really seems to hit more of the kids than the family vibe. Like, I know a bunch of 30 and 40-year-olds like absolutely hate Sing in the Minions movie, but on the flip side, I know a lot of kids that love that kind of stuff. And I think that's one of the really big reasons why Nintendo decided to partner with Universal Studios, specifically Illumination. Families all across the world are gonna go see this movie, and all those little kids are gonna love it, and they're gonna wanna play their first Mario game if they've never played a Mario game before. Which in turn just turns into more money for Nintendo. Because suddenly these kids that weren't gonna buy a system are suddenly buying Nintendo Switches and Mario games and Mario merchandise. And then they start playing other games like Pikmin and Zelda and Splatoon. They're basically going to take the exact same approach that a lot of companies do, which is hook them while they're young. And the other reason that Dynamo Pictures doing animated movies and TV shows makes so much sense is because animation fits so well with so many of Nintendo's IPs, which is a fact I talk about extensively in one of my How to Adapt the Legend of Zelda videos. Actually, there's an entire video dedicated to animation versus live action, as well as movies versus television. It's the second episode in the series. It's a 20 to 30 minute video. It's a long, I'm not going to get into all the details right here. Let's just keep going. But here's the catch. As I mentioned earlier, Nintendo isn't a multifaceted company. They mostly just do games. That is their bread and butter. And I don't exactly see them taking a studio that's only worth $250,000 and making it a big television and movie production company. I feel like it's much more likely that they would do some sort of visual treatment for a larger company. So they would go to Amazon or they would go to Netflix and they'd kind of show what they would want the movie or TV show to be. And then that would either give them the funding, so maybe Nintendo Pictures could actually make it, or the Amazon or Netflix or whatever would actually buy that treatment so they themselves could make the long version. And then also have those exclusive rights to show it on their platform. And the reason I say this is because when you look at their resume, they've used existing IPs that are really well known, like Resident Evil and Final Fantasy. But I feel like most people don't know that Resident Evil Infinite Darkness exists, or Kingsglaive, Final Fantasy 15. I don't even know if I said that right. And if Nintendo is trying to expand their audience, it doesn't seem like just using Dynamo Pictures is the way to go about it. They're likely going to get other people involved, which to me doesn't make that much of a big difference than what they're doing with Universal Pictures. I mean, it sounds like Miyamoto himself is very involved in the Super Mario Bros. Movie, so it sounds like Nintendo already has a good deal of control. On the other hand, maybe it's going a little bit more slowly because, as some of you probably know, English is not the first language of Japanese people. So maybe it's less about Nintendo wanting more control over the IPs that are getting adapted. But instead, it's just easier because they all speak the same language, Japanese. Honestly, it's really hard to say at this point, so I'd say take anyone's best guess with a grain of salt. I obviously would love them to do more adaptations, and Nintendo themselves have already said that they're going to expand more IPs outside of just Mario at Universal Studios. So who knows, maybe in a couple years, we'll have a Kirby CGI show that we can watch on Netflix. Maybe this is even how they get Shikasato the toy to come back to Nintendo and do an Earthbound anime that he could write. Or maybe Nintendo's next console is going to have so many photorealistic games along with VR. Right now it's hard to say, but eventually we're going to find out. Now tell me down in the comments below what you think Nintendo Pictures is going to be doing, or what you hope they're going to be doing. Are they one and the same? Either way, like, dislike, subscribe, all that stuff, it really helps out. And until next time, I'll catch you guys later.